jamming it with paint your body. This is going to be a quick video on priming with a direct-to-metal Waterborne primer. And it's a pretty small repair area that's being taken care of, but here's the label. Here's another portion of the label that's going to give some specs and some information on how to use this. Alright, so what we're working on right here, I'm not sure the year, it's 2016 or 2017 Toyota Rav 4, but you could see it's the rear door, the quarter panel, and going into the hatch and the rear bumper a little bit. I did not do the body work on this. This is how I got the car. But I did tape it up and get it ready for primer. So it's already been waxed and grease removed and wiped down and blown off. Even though you're priming, you still want to make sure it's clean. You know, it's super important to have a clean panel and substrate before you put the primer on. So I'm going to put the first coat on, and I'm going to put this coat on wider and further out from the repair area than the following coats are going to be. This is, I don't know if you could say newer, but this is the newer way to do this. Instead of starting out small and working your way out, with each coat you start out further and work your way in. So that's how I'm doing it on this. You know, I'm sure some of you are wondering, a water-based primer over bare metal. And yeah, it's a direct-to-metal water-based primer, and it works excellent. It dries very quickly, and it sands really easily. So, you know, I actually do really like this primer for how quick it is and how well it holds out. So we're going to take a quick look along the tape here. Pretty much I'm keeping away from that tape because I don't want a hard line. So I'm trying to keep the primer away from that edge as much as I can. You want to avoid having basically like a picture frame around your primer. So trying to keep it away from that tape edge is super important. Alright, so this is the second coat of primer now. The first coat I flashed off with an infrared heat lamp. You could do this with a fan, a heat lamp, you know, a blowgun if you want. I like to put the heat lamp on it with a smaller area like this. Just move the light around as the primer's flashing. And this is pretty quick, so I'd say it's no more than 10 minutes to flash this coat of primer off, and then get right on into the second coat, which is what I'm doing now. Alright, and I'm using for primer, I'm using the Techna primer gun. I use this for sealer as well, so I make sure I clean it out really well in between. The sealer I use is a solvent-based sealer, so you want to make sure you clean the gun out really well after doing the water base, or the Waterborne primer, that is. You know, sometimes it'll leave some chunks, or you just have to clean it out really well. Alright, so this is a look over the second coat. I'm still trying to keep it tight, away from the tape. There's an area up by the gas door to the left of the gas door that I didn't like. So in this view that we're showing right now, what I ended up doing was I flashed off the primer with the heat lamp again, and I pulled the tape back, and that area right there that you see, you could see where I sanded it. I hit that with some 320 just to cut down a little bit. I got too close to the tape in that one spot, and you know, instead of keep going with the primer job and just let it dry that way, I wanted to take care of that as quickly as possible, you know, to avoid any issues later on. So, you know, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I make a small mistake here or there, or something happens, and you know, the important thing is you need to notice it and take care of it right away if you can, or you know, depending on the mistake, you know, learn from that so that you don't repeat it. But that's a pretty minor mistake as far as this goes, and I took care of it really quickly. Okay, so this is the end of the third coat. I'm going to go and I'm going to put a fourth coat of primer on this, just to be safe with it and to make sure I give myself some time, plenty of material to sand any imperfections out. Right here I'm showing you I primed right up pretty much to the tape right there, and I'm showing that and I'm pointing that out because there was a body line right there. Once you get used to priming and taping, you can tape right on the edge of a body line if it's sharp enough and not really have much of an issue priming right up to that, because it's so easy to sand that primer edge off from a body line. Keep in mind you don't want to break through or go too crazy with it, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy and simple to do. And one thing I just want to go back real quick, this bumper is raw plastic, and I'm using a direct to metal primer, which is not suitable for spraying on raw plastic. And part of that bumper was sanded down all the way to the plastic. So it's important to spray an adhesion promoter on there that's going to be compatible with the primer you're using. So in this case I used an adhesion promoter on the bare plastic. That way I don't have any issues with adhesion later on down the line. So the fourth coat of primer is finished up, and I'm going to spray the guide coat on right now. And in this case I'm using just a black aerosol, and I'm going to lightly go over the primer areas and give it a dusting. And it's black, so there's a contrast in color, and this is going to help after the primer is dried and cured, for prepping and to identify any low areas or any imperfections or spots that you might not have gotten to, and just to give you a general idea of where you have sanded it and prepped it, and areas that you need to address or pay attention to a little bit more. So just a quick look over it. That's the appearance it's going to have. Just a light dusting. You don't want to paint it solid black. Just give it a nice dusting, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward.